All right. All right, I am going to open the Los Osos Community Advisory Board meeting tonight. It is August 24th at 7 p.m. So we're due a call to order. Andrea,
Present.
Kristen,
Here.
Danielle,
Here.
Larry,
Present.
Deborah,
Present.
John,
I'm here.
Molly,
Molly's muted.
Oh, she's muted.
okay, you're asking to unmute. Trish Bartel present. Jim Stanfield will be a few minutes late. So I have one announcement under chairperson announcement. My announcement is that we do have 2 vacancies in LOCAC, one in District 1 and an additional one in District 3. So if anyone has any candidates, please let them know. We have talked to a couple people, but then I found out they were a little bit too busy to join in right now. Any council member announcements? Okay, none. Let's go on to county and local reports. Sergeant Elliott. There you are. I'm going to ask you to unmute. It's actually Elliott Coys.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Elliott Coys with Sheriff's Coast Station in Los Osos. So it looks like for last month in July, we were pretty much on pace with this time last year, the amount of calls for service we had. We had 3 assault or battery calls, 53 disturbance calls, which could be a variety of things, 3 burglary reports, excuse me, 7 theft reports, 3 vandalisms, 0 mail thefts, 0 phone scams with any loss, 20 suspicious circumstances, which could be a variety of things as well. 70 proactive enforcement stops, could be pedestrian stops, bicycle, vehicle, and then 27 preventative patrol activity incidents, which could be extra patrols, things of that nature, patrol checks of areas or whatnot. And that's all I've got for the stats. Does anybody have any specific questions about anything?
Thank you. Does the council have any questions? Okay. Does the community have any questions? We have a question from Lindy Owens. Lindy, I'll ask you to unmute. Lindy, we are not hearing you clearly.
You want to set me up for?
Oh, there you are. Okay, you're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I just had an odd question that maybe you can answer. I don't know, might be Highway Patrol. I'm seeing more and more windows in vehicles that are completely tinted to where you can't even see in. Is that now legal to tint windows? I thought that was illegal.
Yeah, you're correct. If it's tinted dark enough where it could impact the driver's visibility, which is pretty much any excuse me, noticeable tint on the windows, it's illegal. It's an infraction citation. So CHP enforces that periodically. We do stop vehicles for it from time to time, but as you know, CHP primarily does vehicle code enforcement in our areas. But yes, it is still legal, especially if it's very dark or you can't even see in or out. Just on the front 2 windows, or the windshield, not the back. The back they can have however dark they want.
Yeah, I just saw one that I couldn't see through the front window or the sides or the back. It was completely black, and I wondered if they have a new method of tinting them where you can see out but you can't see in. But it's kind of scary because you don't know who's in the car, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it needs maybe I'll bring it up with the Highway Patrol. So thank you.
Yeah, anytime.
All right, any other questions? All right, Elliot, thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. You guys have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank
too.
you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Let's see if Captain Klingenberg is here. Anybody see Captain Klingenberg?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, so let's move on. The next will be the county staff report with Claire. And Claire, I'm sure you're going to need to share the screen.
Ooh, unfortunately, we can't hear you.
Can
Okay.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, now we
Okay.
can.
Thank you. Good to see you all. I'll start with just my usual quick staff update. And then if you've seen on the agenda, we'll be presenting, summarizing the results of our Los Osos water offset study. So just to start with my typical update, I sent the monthly plans and permits reports to Trish over today. Those were later than I usually send them. So if in your review you come over any questions or anything, please reach out to me. And then another big piece of news, I think Andrea mentioned it at last month's meeting, but the Los Osos Habitat Conservation Plan was submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service earlier this month, which is super exciting. For context, the HCP Habitat Conservation Plan must be incorporated into the final Los Osos community plan. But there are a couple steps to make that happen. The first is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has to first approve the plan. And then county staff will proceed to take an implementation package to the County Board of Supervisors. If you want more information on that plan, we have it posted up. The public review draft is posted up on our website. And if you have trouble finding it, please reach out to Trish or reach out to me.
Okay, I turned it on now. It's at Hulu or the other one?
And then, yeah, so I'll just move on, Trish, I think, into my
Yes, please do.
Yeah, so before really getting into the nitty-gritty of the presentation, I just want to kind of give context as to the intention of this presentation. It's really just to give a summary of the technical data and the methodology that came out of the offset study. Everything in my presentation today is pulled straight from that report, from the discussion, and this meeting is not really the correct venue to discuss future land use or growth policies for Los Osos. It's just going to be pretty technical today. And for all of your information, a similar presentation to tonight's was given at the Los Osos Basin Management Committee last week I think on Wednesday by my coworker.
How do I get it to
If you wanna
talking part?
grab a pen and paper so that you can jot down any questions or comments that may come up for you during the presentation, please do that. I'd like to hold discussion at the end of the presentation, so please hold on to your questions and don't forget before the end of the presentation. Okay, let me pull up my PowerPoint. Okay, can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, awesome. Okay, got dual screens going on. So just to start it off with an introduction, again, my name is Claire Momberger and I'm here representing the County Planning and Building to provide an overview of the Los Osos water offset study that was completed on June 30th of this year. And the department's environmental coordinator, Erin Sinjwald, is actually also here to be around to help with any discussion at the end of the presentation. And so today, here's just an outline of what we'll be chatting about this evening. I'll provide some background information about the study. We'll have an overview of the results and the methodology used in the study, and then also a summary at the end of some recommended modifications to the Los Osos water offset program as it stands. to really just encapsulate the why for this study, the county commissioned this study using the consultant Madaus Water Management Incorporated. It was published on June 30th of this year. Madaus was contracted by the county to evaluate our retrofit to build program, and also so that we our ongoing land use and water resource planning efforts for the community are as informed as possible. And just a reminder, this is not a policy document, but it's just one piece of the puzzle that is the plan for future growth in the Los Osos community. Again, the study was prepared by Manaus Water Management, and it's available on our department website at the link that's shown on this slide. I will share a PDF version of this presentation with Trish at this week, so you all can have access to look over it in your free time if that's something you want to do. And so to get into it, this intent of the study was to evaluate our retrofit to build program that is administered in Los Osos by the Planning and Building Department and is codified in Title 19 of our county code. The retrofit program was adopted in 2008, and it requires a 2-to-1 water offset for all new development to avoid an increase in groundwater production. This means that a new development must offset 2 times their expected water use. And the source of water savings is different depending on the location of the source. So outside of the sewer service area, toilets and shower head retrofits must come down to the flows that are listed right here on this slide. And then other sources basin-wide include clothes washing machines and hot water recirculation installations. The program overall was intended to be an interim measure to allow marginal development while the Basin Management Committee works to increase sustainable yield of the basin. And since 2008, on average, there have been less than 4 water offset certificates actually issued annually, and not all of these certificates have actually been used to build. The retrofit to build program and the amount of water that must be offset for new development is based on an estimated average annual water usage per residence and an average plumbing fixture use rate. The study was intended to update those averages to reflect current water consumption trends and also to use the best available water consumption data. The study was also intended to estimate the remaining water savings potential that exists in the Los Osos community, considering past water efficiency measures that have already been implemented community-wide. And finally, the study was intended to identify options to increase the reliability of the estimated water savings found through the program. The department may recommend amendments to the retrofit to build program policies as it stands based on these study findings. And those recommendations would be subject to approval by the Board of Supervisors at a public hearing. Any draft changes to the Title 19 ordinance would be made available for public review and have not yet been drafted or published. So as you see on this map, the study focused on the area that the Los Osos Basin Plan area that's defined by the dark blue boundary line there. The water purveyors are also of Los Osos are also represented on this map. The darker blue representing S&T Mutual Water Company, the light blue representing Golden State Water Company, and then the green shading representing Los Osos Community Services District. And then the prohibition zone is also outlined here with that solid green line, including the exception areas. And if you're not familiar, the exception areas to the prohibition zone are just areas where the parcel sizes allow for on-site septic systems to still be used. This slide is actually showing historical annual groundwater production by the 3 Los Osos water purveyors. This is not total estimated production because it does not include the consumption on private wells. But if you notice the trend line here, production volumes have decreased almost 50% since 2004. There are many interrelated factors that affect changes in groundwater consumption, such as changes in state law, economic conditions, changes in consumption behavior based on drought marketing, worldwide pandemics change groundwater consumption, or rebates for water efficiency, many factors affect groundwater production. And we wanted to point out that for the purpose of our study, some county milestones are pointed out on here. That top call out bubble is showing when the retrofit to build and retrofit on sale programs began back in 2008. And then between 2012 and 2016, that's when the community was preparing for the sewer to come online, and there were retrofit requirements associated with sewer connection. And then the COVID year 2020, obviously we all lived it. There were indoor restrictions, and that, could be a possible source of increased residential water production. The 3 county plumbing retrofit programs have created a very robust data set of plumbing fixture flow rate data that is parcel specific. And we were able to share that information with Madaus for the purpose of this study. This pie chart here shows an estimate of total groundwater production from both purveyors and private wells that's broken down into end uses. And this represents estimated groundwater use for the entire basin plan area. Residential water use is broken down into indoor, the dark blue dash, and outdoor, the light blue dashes on this pie chart. And together, residential water use makes up almost 50% of total estimated groundwater production in the study area. And just to hit it back home, this study was focused solely on residential use of water and was based on a 4-year annual average from the Los Osos Basin Management Committee annual reports. This is the last background slide, and then I will get into results and methodology just to let you know where we're at. But this graphic is super helpful, came from the consultant Madaus, explaining the concept of end use. The end use concept is generally used in water planning, and it was used in our study to estimate the future water savings potential for the community. And I'll just kind of explain it from top to bottom. So with that second largest bucket there, that can represent the historical water production data that we received from each of the 3 purveyors, which is just a great time to reiterate our appreciation for the purveyors' collaboration during the process of this study. They were really great to work with. And then the next bucket down where it says single family consumption, that's just representing how the total consumption data was broken down into customer classes or residence type. And then it was further separated into indoor or outdoor use. And the indoor use could be separated into toilets, showers, and clothes washers because of our robust plumbing fixture data that we have from our programs. And then we attributed the majority of outdoor water use to be used for landscaping. All right, that was the background of the project. As a reminder, I'd like to first walk through the results of each section of the study, and then I'll follow up with the summaries of the methodology. So let's dive in. One of the outcomes of the study was to update the average annual residential water usage estimates. These numbers are what determine the number of credits that new development must offset in order to build. The results are shown in this table here, with the units being gallons per day per dwelling unit. The current program assumption is that 150 gallons per day must be offset for single family, and then 75% of that for multifamily. These numbers do not reflect the 2-to-1 offset, so realistically, single family developments are required to offset 300 gallons per day and then double the multifamily number for actual development. So in this table, water usage was broken down by water source, whether that parcel was served by a water purveyor or they use a private well, and then parsed out into indoor and outdoor use. And then there's a total column there. So what we found with the study was that single family dwellings with a water purveyor are estimated to use an average of 128 gallons per day, which is about 22 less gallons per day less than our current program requirement. And single family dwellings that are served by private wells are estimated to use a much higher amount of water on average at 390. Sorry, I forgot I had little animations on there. If you'll follow the yellow highlighting there. Single family dwellings that use a private well were estimated to use a much higher amount of water on average at 390 gallons per day per dwelling unit, which is at least two times the current program estimate. And then the results for multifamily dwellings for both water sources were much nearer to the current program estimate, at coming in at 100 gallons per day per dwelling unit for water purveyor sourced parcels and 112 for private wells. Moving on to the second section of the results that were, that section was offering water savings potential estimates for the basin plan area. At a super high level, 71% of the potential water savings remaining in the community of Los Osos could come from indoor fixtures, and 29% of that could come from outdoor water uses. This is indeed a new slide. This was the last one. This is the new slide. They look a little bit similar, but zooming in from that total of 118 acre feet that could be saved per year, we're now looking at the savings that could come from indoor plumbing retrofits alone. 80% of indoor plumbing retrofit potential looks to remain inside the prohibition zone, which is sort of synonymous with the sewer service area. And then 20% of potential water savings could come from residences that are outside of the prohibition zone. The likely reason for this geographical difference in water savings potential is that there are just different program requirements for new development depending on if the source is inside or outside of the prohibition zone boundary. This pie chart zooms in even more to really break down into the 4 types of plumbing fixtures and to see how they all could contribute to potential indoor water savings if retrofitted. You'll see with this pie chart, half of the indoor water savings could come from replacing toilets down to 1 gallon per flush. 36% of water savings could come from retrofitting shower heads down to 1.5 gallons per minute. And then 13% of total savings could come from retrofitting clothes washers, and 1% could come from installing hot water recirculation systems. Here we're taking a look at the water savings potential with outdoor water use. The remaining water savings was estimated at 34 acre feet per year in the community for outdoor use. Madaus looked at these 3 specific landscape measures with 50% of water savings potentially coming from the replacement of spray sprinklers with drip irrigators. 25% of savings could come from converting turf to drought-friendly landscapes. And then the other 25% could come from installing higher efficiency irrigation devices like irrigation timers or rain sensors. And the methodology for this estimate is discussed on a later slide. Here we have another way to represent the results. This graph shows a comparison of total indoor versus outdoor estimated water savings potential for each of the 4 water sources in the study area. So you'll see from left to right, the Los Osos Community Service District, Golden State Water Company, S&T Mutual Water Company, and then private wells there on the right. Again, this is just looking at residential water use. And if you'll probably notice that the majority of the estimated water savings potential looks to be within Golden State and the CSD's realm. But this really just makes sense because these 2 purveyors include the largest portion, they serve the largest portion of existing residences. That concludes the results portion of this summary presentation. And now I'll provide an overview of the study's methods. First, I would just want to revisit this graphic to remind you that we received consumption data from each of the water purveyors, which was broken down into single family versus multi-family customer categories. And then that was further broken down into different end uses in the indoor and the outdoor realms. The first step in the analysis of the entire study was to estimate the level of saturation of higher efficiency plumbing fixtures basin-wide. This really means that the consultant kind of created like an estimated snapshot in time of proportionally what types of plumbing fixtures actually exist in the community on each parcel based on our department's parcel specific data sets. So to understand, the historical effectiveness of our retrofit programs, Madaus had to piece together just how many homes were in the study area that had bathrooms, how many bathrooms were in there, what types of homes were they, what flows could their plumbing fixtures be operating at based on historical plumbing code and new water efficiency measures. And to do this, Madaus used a couple of data sets from County Planning and Building, and then also the assessor's office. So this figure here on the screen shows the estimated fixture count for toilets on the left, shower heads in the middle, and clothes washers on the right, specifically for single family residences here within the study area. And if you'll notice on the right hand of the screen, there's the different color key. Each fixture is sorted by water supplier, and also if the residences were inside or outside of the prohibition zone. The dark blue represents, or the blue represents CSD, the green represents Golden State, the purple represents S&T, and then the pink and red represent private wells. If you'll notice, most toilets that exist in the community based on the current data sets are estimated to be at a flush rate of 1.6 gallons per flush. Most shower heads in the community are at 2.0 gallons per flush, and then the majority of clothes washers are high efficiency water saving. And this is just a reminder, just for single family residences. And then this graph here is showing the same kind of results, the same kind of estimated snapshot for multifamily residences. The same color profile is there on the right. There are no multifamily residences in the study area that are outside of the prohibition zone. So you're only seeing residences represented here that are inside prohibition zone. And just as a note, mobile homes were included in this category. Okay, and then looking at our second section of results, this slide explains how the average annual. I just want to actually take a pause and just thank you for your attention. And we have a couple more slides of really detailed methodology, but we're really excited to share this information and hopefully to break it down. So take a breather, get a glass of water, and we'll jump back in. So this slide explains how the average annual residential water usage estimates were found for parcels that are served by water purveyors, highlighted in yellow here. You've already seen this table. I showed you a few slides back as it was the first set of results that I presented on. But what we wanted to point out here with the methodology is that Madaus used a 5-year annual average of water consumption from 2017 to 2022. Where the year 2020 was excluded because of higher indoor rates with the COVID-19 pandemic. And then the second bullet point here explains that indoor water use was based on the lowest winter water use for that 5-year period. And then outdoor water use was estimated to be equal to the total water minus indoor water use of the driest year. For residences that run on private wells, highlighted in yellow right here, the indoor use was assumed to be the same volume as water purveyor areas. You can see the number 92 right there, because we do not have private well user consumption data. However, outdoor assumptions highlighted here could be approached differently because of the availability of satellite data, which was very informative in our analysis, because through satellite data, we can identify landscape type and then proceed to calculate the potential water demand of that type of landscape. Here, as a reminder, the second section of the results provided the water savings potential estimates for the entire basin plan area, which was broken down into end uses. Just as a refresher, these were the results. So now I'll move on to speaking about the methods that were used to derive these numbers. This equation here was applied to each type of plumbing fixture, to toilets, shower heads, and clothes washers to determine what replacing those plumbing fixtures, what kind of water savings we could see. Part C of the equation there is showing that the average fixture use rate was developed per fixture type using industry assumptions. The footnotes on this slide contain the references to studies and industry assumptions that were used for this part of the study, and there's an in-depth description of the process in the actual study document. To develop these average fixture uses, we used, Madaus used a 2.4 persons per household assumption that was based on 2020 Los Osos census data. And as you can see here, the average fixture use for toilets in the community is 5.75 flushes per person per day. Average fixture use for shower heads is 6.3 minutes per person per day. And then average fixture use for clothes washing machines looks like about 0.82 loads per day. And here, I just wanted to show that we didn't forget about what hot water recirculation retrofits could contribute to overall savings. This was the basic equation that was used looking at the average water use per unit, multiplying that by 33% hot water use, by 20% hot water wasted, by 50% estimated retrofit savings, and by 5% of residential units targeted. These numbers were not pulled out of the air. They're cited here at the bottom of the screen, and also are included in depth in the study. And we had to rely on industry studies and standards for calculating hot water recirculation retrofit potential, because the county does not currently have a data set for this, as this type of retrofit pathway had not yet been used at the time that the data was collected for the study. All right, this is our last method slide. And this is describing the method that was used to estimate the outdoor water savings potential, really honing in on landscaping water efficiency, as we made the assumption that irrigation makes up about 83% of average outdoor water use. That's an industry informed number. The percentage of targeted residents here was based on Madow's recommendation on what could actually be feasible for the community. But what we're really seeing here is that 30% of estimated outdoor savings could come from converting spray sprinklers to drip irrigators, 30% could come from turf irrigation, and 15% could come from installing efficient irrigation devices. And all the footnotes there, just a reminder, I'll be sending the PDF of this PowerPoint to Trish if you'd like to review for yourself. Well, that concludes the methodology summary of the presentation, and now I'll move into a quick summary of our water offset program recommendations. I would like to just name these out. They're all included in the study, but the first recommendation is to update the required water offset for new residences per the new updated average annual water use estimates for each dwelling type. The second recommendation is to update estimated plumbing fixture daily use rates per the reference industry standards and the 2020 LOCAC census data. The third is to allow additional toilet and shower head retrofits within the prohibition zone to 1.0 gallons per flush and 1.5 gallons per minute, respectively. The fourth is to include outdoor water conservation measures with sufficient verification of continued water savings. And the last is to monitor water use trends. There are many factors that influence water demand that are, out of the control of the county. But something that the county is looking into as a possible program recommendation is having pre and post inspections of plumbing retrofits and outdoor re-landscaping. And I just wanted to mention too, you'll see in the report that there were a few case studies that were used to kind of envision what other recommendations could be made to the program to increase the efficiency. And those case studies are from a couple of cities in California and one city in Montana that has had success at community-wide water savings initiatives. Okay, we made it. Thanks for coming along on this journey. And now I'm happy to open it up to any questions. Trish, I'm not sure if you have a way you'd like to handle that.
I want to open it up to council members first, if there's any council members with questions. That was a great report.
I have a comment. Well done, Claire. That's so much information, very hard to take it all in. And I thought you did a great job presenting. It actually made more sense to me this time than it did when I saw it at the Basin Management Committee meeting. So thank you.
That's great. Soaking it in.
All right, Molly, you're next.
Okay. So there was one slide, I just wanted a clarification, one slide about groundwater production. And you said you took out the year for COVID, I think maybe, but was that the amount that each purveyor pumped out, or the amount that was available, or the amount that was needed? I wasn't clear on that one.
That's a great clarification question, Molly. It's all, I'm trying to pull it up really quick to use, have a reference, but that groundwater, was it this graph?
Because Gosh.
I think it was this.
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
Groundwater
well,
production.
The production, yeah, I was confused on what exactly the word production meant other than pumping out of the ground. Is that all it means? Or does it mean that's all they could get out of the ground?
Great question. Yeah. So for this graph, for this visual, it was just the water purveyor consumption data. It wasn't total groundwater production. Yeah.
So it's what they needed to run their daily operations kind of thing. Okay.
Customer need. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I figured. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, are there, Kristen?
Yeah, for some reason I can't put my hand up. So one of the things is actually related to this slide where I thought it, and I tried to track throughout that, but I had some random drama behind me, so I may have missed it. But we showed the trend of the retrofit to build, and now you're saying there's these percentages based off of thing. Is this taking into account what the retrofits when we went onto the sewer included as well? Like there's an additional amount of improvement that can be made, or no?
Yes, so that second call out button there, the 2012 to
Mhm.
2016, that's, noting when the public works retrofits went into effect. And that data set was pulled on for this study too.
So when we're looking at what we can save, it's actually based off of like that flat number and not other calculations. So we know we've saved this much and 60% of the homes have it now, or whatever it is, and there's an additional 30 we can target. Is that how you guys did it?
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other hands up from council? Okay, anyone from the community? Okay, Becky, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
There we go. Hi, Claire. Thank you. Good job. I appreciate that. I have two questions. One is, could dishwashers be added to this program? I know I've had friends that replaced their dishwashers and were really surprised at how much water was saved with that. And the other one is, are guest houses, home offices, studios with bathrooms, wet bars, and bedrooms required to do this Title 19 offset? Thank you.
Yeah. So with your first question, Becky, we haven't in the past used dishwashers as a source of offset, so it couldn't be used to estimate a program effectiveness, obviously, because it's just not implemented. And we did bring that up with the consultant, but based on just their experience and industry knowledge, dishwashers are typically pretty retrofitted in communities already. That's not to say it couldn't be a source of retrofits, but it's definitely something to consider for the future.
Okay.
Yeah, and then with your second question, so guest houses, or let me encapsulate more residence types and additions. All additions and remodels that are over 120 square feet, I think, is in our Title 19. They're all required to install plumbing fixtures in the addition and in the existing residence that match these low flow fixture rates.
But I guess my question is, so basically, if you're building a guest house, which is a 2-bedroom like little home, are you required to retrofit the 2 to 1 for water savings for that building?
Currently, no.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions from the community? Lindy, let me find you.
Oh, wait, can I follow up on Becky's real quick?
Yes, you may.
She had made a point that I thought was really interesting with the dishwashers. I know in my district, it's actually fairly uncommon to have dishwashers, so it actually might be worth pursuing. Because I thought, like, we talk about switching out all the time, but we'd have to do a huge retrofit on our house to do it. So it might be, just because we're like that smaller town or whatever, it might be worth looking at. That's my input. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm jotting that down.
Thank you.
All right, Lindy, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Great,
Okay.
thank you. Boy, that's a very involved study presentation. You did it well. Thank you. I had a number of questions, and I've never heard the answer, and wonder if during all the work they did on looking at our past records, if we know how many homes have already been retrofitted. I understand the toilet retrofit going from 1.8 to 1 is certainly it's almost half the water saved if you retrofit, but do you have that kind of data? And then I have other questions, but
Yeah, I'm gonna pull that up right here, Lindy. That was this like screenshot or snapshot in time I talked about where the saturation is the word we use to describe how many plumbing fixtures in the community existed at these different flow rates for each fixture, for single family residences and for multifamily.
yeah, but I don't see the information about how many 1.0 toilets we have currently in Los Osos, that gives us an idea of how much retrofitting is still available. I think the toilets is the main thing that seems to make the difference in water savings.
If I can address that, it is here, it's just proportional here to show percentage wise, what calculating it and showing it as a percentage just helps conceptualize what the remaining potential is.
It's so tiny, you can almost not see it, Lindy. It's right. Can you point it out?
I see a 1%.
Yeah, that's the less than 1 gallon per fixture.
My question is more about what we know exists currently that has already reached the best 2-to-1 offsetting. We don't have that information, correct?
That's what this is showing. Sorry, Lindy, if I'm being confusing. So if you'll see what the toilets,
You're
there's
saying
an
that
estimated.
most people have 1.6s?
Yes, but if you see at the bottom beneath toilets, it says there's an estimated 12,500 total toilets in the community. And then, 69% of all those toilets in the community are at a 1.6 gallons per flush.
Okay, good. Thank you. That was
Yeah, it's very layered. So glad
yeah,
to
it
talk
was a lot for my little brain to absorb all at
Yeah,
once.
Lindy, I was psyched you asked because I had the same kind of question and didn't see the percentages at the top or the estimated because you just look at the colors. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I was trying to.
Don't self-efface on that one.
I had another question. When you go to the results slide, self-sources, I'm having a hard time understanding the difference because at other points, it looks like the survey says that single family and multi-residential dwellings the single family uses a lot more than the multiple family, because I don't get it based on the 2.5 per residence estimate, how it varied so differently. Yeah, that's the one. So where you have single family water purveyor 92, they're using 128, where multiple families seems to be using 112. It seemed like, or 58 versus 92 for indoor.
Yeah, the first really big difference there is based on just outdoor use. So obviously for those self-source parcels, on average, they're going to have a larger landscaped area. So their outdoor water use contributes very greatly to the overall total water use. And then I think to kind of address your question, this was also based on that snapshot of like existing fixtures that we know are in the community. So while they're, the 2.4 person per dwelling unit was used for a different part of the study. It was used for, sorry, I'm just going through really quick, the average to figure out the average fixture use per household.
Yeah.
That's where that number came into account.
Okay, so I guess the question might be, how does single-family residence use a lot more than a multifamily, considering that we have 2-bedroom multifamily, 2-bedroom single family? I'm curious.
I
Yeah.
actually know the answer to this one if you don't, Claire.
Well, the 2-bedroom, there's no 2-bedroom estimate that was applied to figure
She
out.
means multifamily versus single family home, I think, right?
Why such a difference? Yeah,
Right, I think that the assumption of the 2.4 persons per household, that wasn't used to determine the overall water use. That was determined to understand the average fixture use of each different type of plumbing fixture. But like I mentioned, the total water use is going to look different based, we can only kind of postulate what the reasons could be. This is consumption data from the purveyors from
right.
that 5-year average. So, a census isn't really discriminating. It's an average, right? A census population number like that of people per dwelling unit is an average across residence type. So it is kind of hard to look at that one number and then think, well, there's so many different type of residences in our community, but this number here did come from actual consumption data. And the study does discuss what the possible reasons for that could be.
Okay, and I had also an odd question. The areas that are outside, there's a lot of discussion about the unmetered wells outside. All the private wells are just estimates, aerial photographs or whatever estimates. And that's 50% of the water that's taken out of our basin every day. So it seems pretty important that this be balanced a little bit. There's also areas in Los Osos that we're allowed to have, they're single family lots, but they're in the 1-acre area that got excluded from the sewer. So I guess the question was, if you were to, does a retrofit go on those houses that are built in the areas that are in that hatched section? Are they exempt? I don't know why they're even allowed to build with a septic tank if they're under 1 acre, but are they exempt from the retrofit?
Every new development within the entire basin plan area is required to do the 2-to-1 offset. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I had one more
right.
suggestion to add is the flume is a device that measures leakage in your houses, and it's very inexpensive compared to what you pay for a bad leak. I wonder if that couldn't be added in as a potential conservation purchase. I like that more than I like the turf idea. But anyway, if you want to put that on your list, a lot of us use it here in Los Osos. It's been very helpful.
Yeah, we were informed of that by a couple of the purveyors. Obviously, with the county being the land use authority, there's not much authority to enforce something like that, but at least at this time. But it's definitely, I know that most of the water purveyors have some kind of affordability situation to help with smart water meter installation. It's a great tool for sure.
It is. Okay, let's move on to Lynette. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hello, Claire, that was a great presentation. Thank you very much. And I just have one question. How or were dual flush toilets counted in this survey? Thank you.
That's a really great question. Lynette, thank you. That is mentioned in the reason that was excluded is mentioned in the study. A big reason was we don't have much we don't have records of many toilets that have that dual flush capability just in our existing program records. So that's a really great question. I'd go back to the study to find more information because I'm having a hard time remembering exactly what the study says, but great question. Thank you.
Any other community questions? If not, Claire, great job. Really appreciate you being on here tonight.
Thank you. No, happy to be here and really happy. I know that was a lot. I really appreciate your efforts.
I'm sorry, Claire, hold on. I think Bob, you didn't raise your hand, but I'm seeing you wave right now. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Okay. We still can't hear you. Ask you to unmute again.
There you
Okay.
Okay, there.
I have one client that owns a piece of property that retrofits were done when the requirement was 300 gallons per household per day. So they did retrofits twice that amount for two homes. And today we only use 150, and that client is still not allowed to go forward building a home. So he basically did a retrofit that's equal to 4 homes today.
Bob, if I can just point out, the retrofit requirement is still 300 gallons per day because that 2-to-1 offset requirement is still in place.
Okay, at 300.
Correct. Yeah. The 150, I'm trying to pull it up to like ground this conversation. The 150 that's right here under current program estimates, that's the actual water demand, but our ordinance goes above that to require the 300 gallons per day.
Okay, so it's not like he's done more than what's been required, but he hasn't been able to go forward without with a building permit because of obstruction. Has the Coastal Commission stopped all this, or are we still allowed to go forward?
That's definitely a bigger picture question. Generally, if a new structure satisfies the county 2-to-1 offset, they can move forward in their building permit process. But of course, the Coastal Commission still has appealability in the community. So that's always a possibility when someone submits a building permit application.
So we could submit for the building permit on this particular property and see how Coastal responds.
I feel uncomfortable answering that on the spot right now, but if you'd like to send me information about the property in the permit, I'd be happy to connect with you over email.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, any other questions?
I've got one.
John, okay.
Could Claire explain where we go next with this in terms of it? If this study is deemed to be one we want to follow, then what is the timetable for it becoming, the law of the land, basically?
Thanks, John. That's a great question. So at this time, there haven't been any recommendations drafted yet to put in a staff report and take to the County Board of Supervisors, but that would be the next step, is drafting some ordinance amendments and taking it to the board, which is when also the public would have great opportunity to offer public comment on those recommendations. I haven't received direction yet on the exact timeline for when that will happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Claire, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice
all.
job, Claire.
Great report. Great report. Let's move on to Supervisor Bruce Gibson. And I am asking you to unmute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And quite clearly, I cannot come close to competing with Claire on substance tonight. So I will try to do it with, I don't know what, humor or deflection or something. Let me, first of all, Claire, thanks so much for the time you spent on all this and the time tonight. But let me bring it down to the bottom line. This is a really important study that verifies that basically 2-to-1 retrofit, 2-to-1 retrofitting works. It actually does save water. Out of the study comes some ideas that we may want to tweak the exact parameters. You know, how many gallons does a particular fixture's retrofit gain, and we do need to get to that 2-to-1, that 300 gallon number. But basically the concept is solid. The report also makes clear that we should be, you know, careful and sure that we're verifying the results properly. So that's all good stuff. And as Claire indicates, we can come and adjust the Title 19, which is the building permit side of this. How this then plays into the actual local coastal program, the ability to finish the community plan, to imagine what level of growth is appropriate given what we know about the water supply, which brings in a lot of stuff from the basin, other stuff from the Basin Management Committee. That's all ahead of us as well, that we hope to be doing sometime probably later this year and being back in front of the Coastal Commission. I would hope in the first quarter of next year, but it may be in the first half of next year. So just to give you a little context on all that. In other news, let me just mention one thing that was in the past. At our August 8th meeting, we took a report from the Parks and Rec Commission, their annual report, but it went several steps further, outlining significant issues with deferred maintenance, a relatively low level of staffing in our parks, rangers, for instance, you know, relative to the number of residents we have in the county. Our number of rangers hasn't changed in years, and so on a resident to ranger ratio, we're falling behind. And so they made some very strong recommendations that we're costing out and looking into to up the game in our parks. We had ringing endorsements from our sheriff and DA as to the value of parks as a means of, particularly with young people, giving them a path that keeps them from intersecting law enforcement, as you know, we hope. So that'll be back. I know the question of parks has long been important in Los Osos, as you are relatively short on park space, but just know that I'm working with our Parks Department to see whether what we can where we can move on that. Looking ahead at the September 12th meeting, which is actually our next meeting, a little under 3 weeks from now, we will be hearing a report on the paths toward creating an independent commission to perform the redistricting of the supervisorial districts within the county. I think you're all pretty well familiar with the saga of redistricting coming out of the 2020 census that left Los Osos orphaned briefly, technically, never in reality, I will hasten to add. And so I think there are a number of different options, either heading toward a ballot initiative that would solidify that by vote of the people here, or possibly state legislation. There are efforts to require counties of a certain size to create independent commissions for redistricting. And that's again in process, will be playing out over the next year of this, the second year of the legislative session in Sacramento. Beyond that, the normal selection of interesting things is happening in the county. We're already starting to look ahead to our next fiscal year. Our current fiscal year, 23-24, just started on July 1. We expect a challenging budget year for the next fiscal year, which will start July 1 of 2024. We're starting to think about that. We're working on homelessness. We're working on water issues, not only in Los Osos, but significantly in the Paso groundwater basin. We've got Diablo Canyon. We've got a bunch of different things. So rather than provide detailed reports on all that, I will stop now and be available for your questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from council? No. Okay, from community, we have Lindy. I'm asking you to unmute.
There we go. Thank you. Hi, Bruce. I wanted to ask, this has been brought up at the Basin Management a number of times about the fact that the private wells don't have any kind of quantity metering. In other words, we depend on aerial photography to guesstimate what amount of the 50% is estimated to be taken out unmonitored. And I know that in the Paso Basin, you've brought it up that you insist that the private wells be monitored so that you can have an idea of what that basin is losing. I see properties on wells now planting huge fields of agriculture. That's a huge addition. And if we don't get the monitoring, the usage monitoring, I'm not sure how we can ever guesstimate or have any control over how much water leaves the basin. So that's question one. Question two was, I think it's been like 5 years now, the community discovered that the chips in the playground were toxic and kids were coming back with, it was a oil-based ground cover that they put in there. Our community went forward and raised the money and got volunteers to come in and take all the old chips out, put the safer new chips in and purchase them. Can we get a credit towards our park, towards at least planting some of the trees, and just fairness that our community took that on because the county didn't have the money and they had 2 more years of, the toxic stuff lasting. So that's number two. Number three was, we have a maintenance yard on 10th Street, and it still would be an ideal place to begin to do some social services to address the homelessness. We still have people on Palisades coming and going, but there's definitely still quite a presence of homelessness that's not addressed. And that yard could set up a place to have safe overnight, places for them to stay. And I think it could probably have a lot of community volunteers, possibly Los Osos Cares could set up their office there too. So that's my 3 questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, let me work in reverse. In terms of providing services for homelessness, we have now a homelessness division under our Department of Social Services. They're looking at a variety of facilities, partnerships with our nonprofit sector. We're focusing on sizable projects in partnership with cities and working to set up the necessary services where we need it. We can mention that site to it. Last I recall, Public Works did have some use for that site. So I would say it's probably unlikely that site's going to be a high candidate. We've got a number of other much larger sites, such as Higuera in San Luis Obispo, the purchase of the Motel 6 in San Luis Obispo that'll provide a lot more bang for the buck there. But we can certainly keep that in mind. As to the chips, that was a great project that the community chose to do. But looking forward, we're really looking as to how we can expand the acreage of parkland here, and it's really too early to tell what the financial arrangements of that are going to be. Know that I certainly am advocating on behalf of the community to make that happen. And finally, in the matter of monitoring wells, we've talked about this quite a number of times. If we look at those wells that draw from the Los Osos groundwater basin outside of the service areas of the service providers, we know there are quite a number of residences out there, a couple hundred, I think. But we also know that it's highly likely that it's the actual irrigated agriculture that uses a vastly larger amount of water than those residences. We get a pretty good idea of what residences use. And so it always, the thought, yes, it's absolutely important to measure what you need to manage. And so meters were the original thought, but actually technology has accelerated, and in Paso Robles and actually in Los Osos as well, we are analyzing satellite data that can very accurately record the amount of evapotranspiration is the technical term, but basically they can calculate pretty well the need for water, irrigation water on crop types. And so I think that that's likely going to be the next step. We're working to implement it in Paso. We're working to test it in Los Osos. I think that's going to be a big boon to understanding just how much water is used in those areas.
Could we have at least an analysis of what it would cost to put private metering on, especially if it can be done like our smart meters?
Yeah.
It's being done in S&T and they know exactly what every house is using, and those meters on a private well couldn't be that expensive.
The metering in S&T was all part of the requirements of the sewer. But no, there's not a program at this point to put forward an estimate or a program on metering individual wells. The business of estimating water use by satellite is vastly less expensive, and so we're going to be working on that first.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Thank you, Lindy. We're going to go back to Council Member Andrea.
Thanks, Trish. Good evening, Bruce.
Hi.
A comment and a question. The comment is that Parks and Recreation has been typically dismissed for years, not only in the county of San Luis, but also in the cities in our county. I thought that report by the Recreation and Parks Commission was excellent. And I really hope that we can look in the future to fund appropriate parkland and recreation activities in Los Osos, because we are, as you know, woefully inadequate. And I think just one other quick correction maybe, or comment to your comment, is that parks are really for all people, not just youth. They're important for all people. So I really hope we can make some progress. It's really sad.
I agree.
And then
I agree
my
with
question,
everything you say there, Andrea.
Thanks, Bruce. And then my question is, can you give a quick update on what's happening with the county CAO recruitment?
Nothing at this point. We have an outstanding individual in as our CAO now, John Nylon. I think we mentioned him, 32-year employee of Kern County, 8 as their CAO when he retired a few years ago to move to Cambria. And with the resignation of our previous CAO, John stepped forward, and once we had a chance to chat with him, we realized he is just the guy who we need at this time to not only keep managing the business of the county day to day, but also to help us look forward in a strategic way to what we want the county organization to look like going into the future. So what we've done is extend his contract until the 1st of May of 2024. And at this point, he's working through some great programs that are going to help us make more efficient and effective our services with the current level of staffing. He's going to help us work on culture and morale and a bunch of different things that have been suffering over recent years. And so as we get into next year, probably sometime in the first quarter, we'll start thinking about the permanent recruitment then.
Okay.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. Okay, Becky, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
There we go. Good evening. I had a couple of questions. One, while we're talking about parks, I say yes on having the rangers. I think it was really important having the attendant. I don't know if he was called a ranger at the skate park. I know we've seen a lot of, it's gotten better, but drug dealing going on in the park. And if we want our youth to hang out there, and if the parents want to feel safe sending their kids there, there needs to be an adult presence watching that. Also, there was some talk, I'm not sure where it came from, about Sunnyside School possibly being sold, and that might be an area that could be partially a park for Los Osos with pickleball courts and some other things there. That would be great if we could. And then my last question is, could you update us on what's happening at the Oklahoma Avenue safe parking site? And then along with what Lindy said, yeah, you mentioned places in San Luis and in the city that could be used for homeless people here, but we don't have anything here. And that 10th Street property, I know there's one man that uses an office there and there's some parking going on, but I mean, there's the building. And then, you know, we have Los Osos Cares that's sitting on a school site right now. It'd be nice to have that over on 10th Street. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I'll take your first couple as commentary. And yes, you know, in terms of parks, we're going to look at all options. If the school district, you know, does move forward and you know, it wants to transfer Sunnyside School, certainly worth a very deep conversation, and because there'd be a lot of community benefit on a whole number of different levels. In terms of your question about Oklahoma Avenue, we continue to draw it down. We've got, I can't remember exactly which service provider is in there helping our homeless services division on case management with individuals seeking to get them to permanent housing. And we indicated that we were going to do this in a way that transferred them without discharging them to the street. At this point, we're still working through that. We expect that to take the rest of this year and probably a bit into next, although again, conversations are going on and things are a bit fluid because we are in fact investing quite a bit more in homeless services. New ideas are coming. So as of right now, it's a slow drawdown toward closure compassionately as we planned for a long time. But we're gonna be month to month doing the best we can to transition that site to other places of service.
Okay, thank you very much. Great report, Supervisor Gibson. And we are now going to go to SLOCOG, Maria Kelly. Somebody have Maria?
There she is.
There she is.
Unmute.
Thank you.
There you
This
go.
is a really hard follow-up to all these awesome conversations that you're having. But I will zip through this because we're going to want to talk about this more later. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and get started, but just know that that I'm here this evening to talk a little bit about the RTP and SLOCOG and some funding issues. There will be more conversations to come. So if you have questions as I go through this, go ahead and drop them in. I'll try to track them as we go. Otherwise, we'll save them till the end. Typically, this presentation can take about 15 or 20 minutes, but I'll speed it up a little bit. So my name is Maria Kelly. I'm supporting the SLOCOG staff. I live in Atascadero. I'm a local community member. I've lived in the county about 20 years and just helping them do some of the outreach around some of this work effort. If you have a smartphone and you're able, and you can scan the QR code that is on this first slide, it will actually pull up the PowerPoint presentation for you as we go through it. But more importantly, this first round of coming back to communities after the regional transportation plan has been received by the communities in the county. There's going to be more work that we're going to do. So we really need some initial data location and more look where you live, obviously along the coast. But also there will be some key questions as we look at program prioritization and implementation. So just a little bit of data, so somewhat interactive, but I will.
I don't want to derail you, Maria, but the
Yeah.
QR code doesn't go to your PowerPoint. It goes to a what improvements are most needed link. So
That's the right one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're supposed to, it's like a feedback, not a link to the slide.
Right. Sometimes if in Menti, the program is called
Yes.
Menti, it'll track through, but the questions are there and the surveys are there. But thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Thanks, that's helpful. So anyway, so we're definitely looking for feedback. So SLOCOG is our regional planning organization. They do a significant amount of work and planning for our region unincorporated as well as our cities. And this slide is just a brief overview of all those things that they're working on: highways, streets, roads, rideshare, bike paths, pedestrian bus, all of the things. So SLOCOG is really responsible as our regional transportation organization, our municipal planning organization, to really track all those things. So, oh, thank you, Kristen, for dropping that in chat. If anybody wants to open it up from chat, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So just an example of a few of the projects over the last few years, and then some of the other things that they take a look at. As we know, transportation continues to be somewhat of an issue in our area. So we're going to talk about how that works into the plan and what we're going to see in the future. So jumping ahead, and I'll share a little bit about SLOCOG. I won't spend as much time on that. But if you are interested, if you're not familiar with who they are or what they do, please go to the slocog.org website, and I will drop in chat at the end, towards the end of this presentation. I'll drop in sort of the website and all the information that they've been developing around the regional transportation plan. The regional transportation plan is a 25-30 year plan that's just been completed, but SLOCOG has to do it like every 3 to 4 years and really have to dive into the unincorporated areas, incorporated areas, and just cover the entire county. So who sits on these boards? What are these conversations and who's represented in these conversations? All 5 of our board of supervisors and a representative from each city. So again, what's unique to, as we keep in mind, as we're talking about San Luis Obispo County, is our square miles. We're a very large county, and we are we're pretty underfunded. I'll say it gently that way. We're very underfunded when it comes to pulling that tax back that supports this work. I will dive into that a little bit more, but just trying to set the landscape. Council of Governments, there's 44 regional transportation authorities, of which you can see mostly on the coast and then into Southern California. And then there's 18 municipal planning organizations. That's how we get our federal funding. The Transportation Authority is how we get our state funding. And that all comes in under the Council of Governments and sort of that collaborative planning. So while our infrastructure, our planning infrastructure is intact and it's sound and it does the job that it's supposed to do, we're not always able to fund the work on roads and different sorts of projects that we want to do, as we're pretty well aware. So here's the code. If you do want to just go to the menti.com and type in this number, that will take you to the same place that I was sharing with earlier. So I'll just give you a minute, because again, we're just going to test it out. First, we do the test of like, where are you from? Where do you live? And we populate it, and then I'll dive into more information on this project. So if someone wants to give me a thumbs up if I should keep going. Okay, thank you. So where do you live? Central, no. North Coast unincorporated is what I would put for Los Osos. So, but just a practice. Yeah, go ahead.
I cut to the link that the QR code had, and it does not take you to that. It's a different link. So
okay, I will let Annie know, because she put this up together. So if
that's fine. It starts with a question that says what improvements are most needed. So
yeah, that slide comes later.
Yeah.
So it's gonna come
so
later.
I just thought I'd let you know, and then everybody.
No, I appreciate it though, because yesterday the other day when I was with the Realtors Association, the same thing happened. So I'll let Annie know that when she put that together.
There we go. Now I got it to work. So if everybody,
somebody got there. So thank you. Just so that you know sort of how it works now, if you want to go to menti.com and use that code. So perfect. And we track that. So even if you can't do it like during this presentation, please take the time if you can to do it after. It's really, really helpful. So the RTP is a 23, I said 25, but 23, they build on it every year, 23-year outlook. And what we have available, just based on what we pull back from the feds and the state, is that we have about $3.1 billion in available revenue. While the plan was adopted in June, and looking at all of the projects, we're still going to see a shortfall looking out to 2045 of additional $3.9 billion. If we did everything in the plan, absolutely everything, which again, I'll drop that link in so you can see what that plan is. We have a shortfall of about 1.5 billion. Sorry, 3.1 billion available, and we have a shortfall, sorry, 1.5. We have a need for 5.4 billion with that shortfall of 2.3. So it's not insignificant. And again, these are things that buy local, buy into community in unincorporated, incorporated areas all. So this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because we cover this. And again, it's just showing where those shortfalls are, but I'm going to spend more time on this in a different slide. So this is for all highways, major roads, and it focuses on congestion relief, safety improvement, interchanges, just basic maintenance, transit services, senior transit services. It's everything. So we're not just talking about paving of roads, it's all transportation. So let's talk a little bit about how we do get that funding. Our transportation funding absolutely 100% right now relies on the gas tax from the state, sort of that state pool is that bucket, that 100%. And this is basically at this point, which just goes to our roads, potholes, buses, and improvements. So this was started in 1993, and on average, so the data says that on average, about $190 was paid on average to per car for the gas tax. When you adjust for inflation to 2021, that would be about $537, or sorry, $357, like up at the top of that. But due to efficiencies and hybrids, electric vehicles, different types of transportation, instead it's actually about $266. So exponentially, while we are, you know, more cars, more on the road, the innovation of technology and conservation have actually reduced the number of gallons we're using, which also reduces the amount of revenue for our county. So efficiency has had an impact, which is great on one hand. On the other hand, it's making it more challenging as that fuel decreases because we don't have a similar requirement on hybrid cars at this point in time like we would for those gas. So just keeping that in mind, that the dollars we actually would think over time would increase, it's not, it's actually decreasing. So what else is important? There's this national transportation research is somewhere some of this data is coming from. This is important for our consideration, is that fatalities are increasing specifically on rural roads in rural counties, of which we are one. It is a research group, and we just want to make sure that the key takeaways of analysis is why it's important to maintain our transportation, maintain our roadways, do what we need to do to make sure that it's safe. Our roads are deteriorating, and with deterioration, our safety impacts are more, there's more opportunity for more accidents. They also have identified shortfalls in funding, and when they identify that and the lack of ability to be able to rely on transportation, like appropriate transportation, whether that means roads or buses or any of these other important ways we get from point A to point B, this has an impact on our economy, and it has an impact across sectors we don't even typically think of. So that's on the right hand side. There's secondary impacts when we have decreased quality of roads. So we're going to try to do another question again. So here we go. This is the one that's most important. This slide, to me, this slide is important because we've been talking about safe routes to schools for a long time. We've talked about safety improvements. I know that from some of our rural areas further out, you know, buses and senior transportation is really, really important. We have a growing senior population throughout our county. Some of that is, you know, maybe more in North County or more in other areas, but when we speak to, when I've spoken to a couple organizations, we know that as our senior population increases or we become seniors, senior transportation is necessary. So it becomes really important. So thank you for that. This is really helpful. Thank you. Appreciate your time with that one. So I'll move on. Anybody can always go back at any time and go through this. So we have a couple of options. So part of this is, all right, so how do we fund that funding shortfall in point A to point B? We know what we can count on. We know what we need to do or we know how we could allocate what we have once we have those priorities. So we could just do nothing. We could just continue to operate the way we operate and just sort of deal with what we're dealing with. And, you know, we know that there's more congestion on the roads. It doesn't even really need to be a bullet, because it's when you're traveling anywhere through North County or South County, and even I haven't traveled on Los Osos Valley Road during the middle of the day in a while. But anyway, you defer improvements. It takes longer to get to a project development. We have a great example of that in the Pismo project that I'm going to touch on. But this is the doing nothing. We just sort of continue to do with the way we're doing it. We also, under this option one of sort of do nothing, is continuing to chase grants. LOCAC team does an absolutely, I personally over the years have watched them really work hard at trying to stay competitive in grants. But as with the old saying set, the old adage is, it takes money to make money. And if we don't have funding that we can leverage or put forward, as we've got this pot, we'll be able to match sometimes grants. It's not unusual for state funding to be matching grants or some or 25% or whatever. So we only are able to really apply for grants where it doesn't always require a match. So here's the number of applications between 2015 and 2022. A lot of time is being put into writing these grants. So with 61 submitted, 19 awarded. That's pretty good. That's still not, it has not been enough to actually truly do what we need these funds to do. The good news is, like I shared, is we got a huge grant. LOCAC was able to win the 65 million for Pismo for the 101, but because it took so long to do it, even that money is only going to address about 4.5 miles of that road. That's really not a long-term, it's going to be a good fix and a start towards a solution, but it's really not a long-term solution for that. I had a great question from in Pismo actually on this. The question about, you know, planning with Caltrans, who's the state, where's the state responsibility, where's Caltrans responsibility? The state, the county, everyone works together the best that they can, and certain entities and agencies have certain responsibilities. So just got to keep that in mind when we're talking about priorities and projects. But going on, so this is the slide I shared with you, that the do nothing on the left-hand side and the do something on the right. The reason why this is important, why I think it's important, or it's, you know, as we've discussed it, is you look at all the other counties around us that have already implemented some sort of self-improvement, self-help tax that they're able to use to leverage for other funding for grant funds. We're the only one that doesn't. We don't have any. And I want to point out that the tax that we're talking about, that self-help in those other counties, when SLOCOG is thinking about this and planning on it, 99% of any additional tax would go to infrastructure. So 99%, 100% for infrastructure. So if keeping in mind, as you have questions, we can dive into that a little bit more. But this is how we compare, and why you'll sometimes see, you know, roads in Santa Barbara County, or the whole Santa Maria area, when that was built up, you know, a decade or so ago, that was directly related to their self-help. So on the left-hand side, you can see the slide with the picture with green, the picture with yellow, picture with red, picture. So those are the varying degrees of quality of road. And then on the right-hand side, you can sort of see the preventative maintenance versus the reactive maintenance over time. What happens over time? It becomes more expensive. So the key takeaway from this slide is that ultimately towns, communities, incorporated cities are having to pay a lot more to maintain roads than they should, because the conditions have slipped into that fair and poor or worse. And that fair is the yellow slide down, where you can sort of see the slurry seal patches. And two, currently, SLOCOG doesn't have any funds to do any local maintenance. We don't, because we're not a self-help, we don't have the funds. So all the city or the county is having to do all of this mostly themselves. as a comparison, in Monterey County, they actually have a whole organization that manages it all, but has significantly more guaranteed monthly, up there in that right hand corner, the 12.5 million annually guaranteed just for maintenance. Okay, keep running ahead. So I wanted to bring your attention, when we talked about this, is Santa Cruz County, and it's a little bit of a troubling comparison, because while population may determine how much gas tax we get back, we're a larger county square mileage wise. We're much larger than Santa Cruz County. We have more miles and roads of miles. So, but at the same time, wanting to show that comparison of the doing nothing versus doing something. And, you know, it's really important to remember that when counties have that tax, whether it's a half cent, quarter cent, a cent, whatever, and it's for transportation, it is solely for transportation. It cannot be used for anything else, because it goes to SLOCOG to do the planning, to do the work, to get the work done, to implement the transportation plan. This isn't funding that goes back into a city or into a general, it's 99% for infrastructure. So here's some examples of sort of what some primary areas of congestion that they took pictures of, and there's the southbound, and then there's the northbound in North County, which can get extremely congested during holidays, Fridays, fair time, but even just in general. There's some real safety considerations on that northbound. So just an example of some of the things that we'd be looking at, or that SLOCOG would want to be looking at. So an example of doing nothing, for those of you that recall, this is what we're talking about, the Measure J that came to us. This is about the citizens being allowed to vote. We get to choose, we would choose whether, yes, we want to pay an additional tax, or more importantly, that this type of tax that potentially could be proposed, if it goes through, if the SLOCOG board says, yes, let's go this direction. It would include all the tourists, anybody that's coming to our community, anybody that's visiting us would also would absolutely be a part of this funding that we would be able to complete. But I wanted to show, so the doing nothing, so that was in 2016, for anyone that remembers, that almost passed. The voters did want it to, we did have it take it to a vote, and it lost by about 500 votes, which resulted in that about $285 million in funds that we could leverage for grants. So just an example. So moving on. You have other business you need to take care of. So what is the cost? What is the, if, again, this isn't only an if the SLOCOG board did take a proposal to, or the SLOCOG staff took a proposal to the board, these are some examples of what that tax would look like potentially, like 15 cents on a shirt. Ultimately, and again, we all are aware that this is a very challenging time to be talking about taxes. This would be something that would show, if it was put to the voters, would show up next year. It's not something that's going to show up in a special election. This would come on our ballot next year, when there's probably going to be other potential, requests for local funding. But again, this is just for transportation, and 99% of it is all for projects, just for infrastructure. So I think I have one or two more questions. This is the one that you saw, Kristen, first. What improvements are most needed? And that's totally subjective, whatever you think it is. It's important to, as we start sort of charting these and developing this by region, it's important to identify where the similarities are, where the differences are, and then the SLOCOG, so the SLOCOG staff can take some of those thoughts and those recommendations back to the board. So I just take all this information, give it back to SLOCOG staff, and we go from there. So feel free if you want to do that, that's great. Would ask that if you have a minute and you can do the traffic light question, because it's important for us all to know now whether we should do nothing and sort of just stick with what we're doing, or we want to do something. Maybe it's yellow, maybe it's green. So if you're not able to access Menti, but I can see you on the screen, if you are really just not interested in a tax coming to the people, you can give a thumbs down. If you're just really not sure what we're talking about or what we're thinking about, give me a yellow if sideways if you want to. And if you would support a 0.5-cent sales tax, feel free to give me a thumbs up or shoot me a message in the chat. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. That is really, really helpful because it's important to really get accurate information, again, back to the staff. So that I will stop. I'll stop sharing in just a minute. I'll make sure there's no questions. So please, I was going to drop the website. I will drop the website as soon as I stop sharing. It's really important here's the reality of it. SLOCOG is going to keep coming back to us, our communities, to ask us to help support the transportation. So whether it's not in 2016 and if it's not in 2024, we're going to keep hearing about this. This is important because our roads continue to be a challenge, and there continues to be, we want buses and we want senior transportation, like I said. So James Worley is the lead planner. That is his email address. If you'd like to reach out to him, he's absolutely happy. This is their passion. This is what they do. So, thank you, Kristen, for dropping that in chat. Appreciate that. And you'll probably hear from SLOCOG again. We will be doing a focus group later in September and really dive in a little bit more, but I'll stop there. This is a very long presentation and happy to answer whatever questions I can. And if I can't, I will pass them on to James and Annie and we'll get back to you. But
thank you so much. Maria, you have a question from Deborah?
Yes.
Maria, not a question, a comment. We have a great opportunity here with the Los Osos Valley Road corridor study that the county is currently undertaking, and I'm going to do a little talk about that in my report. But once that study is finished, it will highlight the needs of Los Osos in our community on Los Osos Valley Road. That's great. But nothing will happen if there's no money to do these projects. And because we're not incorporated, we don't have the ability to go and do these projects ourselves. We are dependent on the county to fund these projects, and the money comes through SLOCOG. So I don't think it's hard to understand that I would be very much in favor of getting something going that would provide funding for our projects, because we, Los Osos, would benefit directly from that kind of thing, because we're going to have projects that are going to be highlighted because of this study, and we have a very large community voice behind it. So my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Noted.
And Andrea.
Hey, Maria, it's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Nice to see you too.
Nice to see you. Just a comment. I was in the government when this went through in 2016 or didn't. And I would just suggest, and I'm guessing SLOCOG staff has already thought of this, but how they presented it the last time and why it failed, and how can they present it differently this time to hopefully have it succeed. So, I'm sure they've already thought of that, but that's just a couple of comments there. And thank you for the presentation. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for that. Yeah, the messaging is such a challenge because, again, you're asking people to self-assess. Yeah. At the same time, tourism is one of our largest economies. Let's get tourism and paying on this. So anyway.
Kristen.
I just wanted to say, I mentioned this to James when I met with him this week, but your presentation was amazing. And you guys I don't know if you've already looked at this, but when the schools basically wanted the taxes, they went out to the community and asked the community to form something. I actually think there'd be a big groundswell that I think a lot of us would be a big part of if you were able to get us together in some way.
For the for the overall for safe routes to schools, which one?
No. What I'm saying is take that campaign that everybody's
Oh, got it.
for school funding. I think it was Prop 6 or something. And
Oh,
then get, the people in the community to get together, because I know you're not allowed to lobby yourselves. I think there's a lot of people here who would lobby for you, especially with the kind of basis you're giving. So,
yeah, yes, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I'll take that back to give it back to staff. And it may be something that we can incorporate then as they move into sort of the focus groups to find out a little bit more how to message.
Okay.
I just think the voters should be able to have a choice, right? So.
Lindy, I only have 15 minutes to do a whole page of the agenda. So if you have a quick question, go for it.
Just a couple quick questions. One, when we talked about the priorities, you said that there's 3.9 billion is the lack of funding. So I guess I hope that someplace in the presentation, if we look at it deeper, we'll see what those priorities are. Or is there a survey that you have?
Thanks, Lindy. I dropped into chat sort of the actual RTP. So there's projects identified, but project priorities will come from community. And that, again, this will be an ongoing process. So it's not determined like what that priority is. And again, thank you for your time. And you have a lot of presentations coming at you this evening. So.
And I had another quick question.
Yep.
Every time a new business increases their parking, they have to pay a fee to the county for road access improvements. And I guess that I'm questioning whether that goes into the general SLOCOG fund or where that money goes.
I don't think I can totally confidently answer that, but if it's a county fee, it goes to the county. It doesn't go to SLOCOG.
And what do I hope they use it on roads instead of the general fund. So
I'm sure that
we don't have that answer for you, Lindy.
I wanted one quick other question is a lot of us are not high tech. So when you think of these presentations and using the code bars, please remember that a lot of us cannot do that.
Yeah,
And
there's
lastly,
an option for logging in. These were typically done in person too. And then we have a paper survey, but we can't do the paper survey with you. So we have that option.
Lastly, I consider potholes less important than public transportation because we have a speeding problem in our country and potholes serve as speed bumps to some degree for those that give a darn about their car. So, but I think we definitely need to improve the public transportation, whether it's smaller vans. I hate to see these giant RTA buses driving around with nobody on them, but I think that people really can leave their cars behind, and public transportation is probably the most important thing I can see us improving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy. Okay, Maria, thank you. Great report. Sorry, it's a little rushed tonight.
It's okay.
But we've got some great information under the chat. So everyone in the community, please take a look at the chat link and get your information from there. All right, let's move on to the CSD report with Matthew. And Matthew, I'm asking you to unmute.
Hello, good evening. Yeah, at the CSD, we have several different water-related projects happening or about to start. One is the 16th Street Tank Rehabilitation Project. We've been working to get that project going for several months, and work is scheduled to start late in September. When we have it absolutely finalized, we'll start neighborhood outreach, and it's going to be a noisy project because they're going to be recoating the paint or recoating the tanks. So we apologize already for the noise, and there's going to be some impacts with equipment moving in and out to get those tanks or that tank ready to go. Other projects that are going to start are related to the program Seawell. So that's the well drilled in the Bay Oaks neighborhood to shift pumping from the west side to the east side of the water basin. The water main transmission project has been awarded, and that project should start in September as well. And that project will eventually impact South Bay Boulevard. And the actual well equipping project, we've been delayed, waiting for electrical equipment. But that's out to bid for the construction, and it looks like we're going to be proceeding with work sometime this fall. There's also 2 other basin management, BMC Basin Management Committee projects. One is the transient groundwater model project, which is underway with Cleith Harris. And the second is a lower aquifer monitoring well, which is going to give us better data on seawater intrusion into the lower zones. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the projects going on with the CSD. We've been spending at the Parks and Rec Committee, spending quite a bit of time looking at active recreation opportunities. We've had great community input from the pickleball community, the tennis community, and then Coast Little League and South Bay Soccer, which are the two of the youth sports organizations. And really, we're looking at that issue that Bruce brought up earlier about, we're lacking in park space, and we're having, competing different sports wanting the same locations, sometimes at the same time. And so we're listening to all of those needs. And the committee is kind of looking at a 2-pronged approach. One is really our school district. The schools are our sports fields for the kids, and oftentimes tennis courts, pickleball courts are also located at Loams. One of the ways that we think that we can improve parks and recreation in Los Osos is to better partner with the school district. So we're looking to set up memorandums of understanding to more lay out these youth sports with the soccer fields and the baseball diamonds that we have in town. Some of those things we're directly competing with the school district on some things. Like, for instance, this fall, the school district has boys soccer available, but that's directly competing with South Bay Soccer, which already has over 600 kids in it. So we're looking for ways to be able to work together with the school district and streamline this, where we're not competing. We don't have competing entities with, do I do the school soccer or the South Bay Soccer? And then also the reality is there's only so many fields available. So we need to make sure that there's space for youth sports, space for tennis courts and whatnot there. The other side of it that we're looking at is Ron Munns, General Manager Munns, is been reaching out and is looking to partner with LOCAC to review the Los Osos community plan and look at recommendations to make to the county to address all of the active recreation needs that we've been getting so much public input about. So we've been very active on parks, and especially looking at ways to basically improve what we have existing, and then have that eye forward for what could happen in the future. The other initiative going on right now is we've sent out a RFP for a standard of cover survey. This is a comprehensive study on how the CSD can provide, or how we're providing emergency services right now, and how that can be improved now, and then what that service looks like out into the future. So what we're going to get out of that is a strategic plan for emergency services in Los Osos going forward. And we're considering the award of that standard of cover survey, that contract, at our next board meeting in a few weeks. With that, I'm open for any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Any questions from the council? Okay, from the community? Great, thank you, Matthew, so much. I appreciate it. Chamber of Commerce, Jim. He may not be here.
Well, there he is.
There I am.
There you are.
Yeah, you got me cut out. Chamber is actually working pretty strenuously on developing our Oktoberfest. Planning is already taking place. We're considering putting some music at the end of seconds by the wharf and by Santa Isabel. So we'll have some alternate music location and make the fest a little more festive feeling. So that's kind of what we're working on the most. The other thing is we're working diligently with the community center, trying to work together to have somebody at that community center office all day long. So a part of it would be chamber personnel and part of it would be community center personnel. But by joining forces, we can people available to be open to people who drop in. So that's taking place.
Okay, thank you so much, Jim. Let's move on to public comments for items not on the agenda. Any community members? Okay. All right, let's move on, Jim. You're back on for the treasurer's report.
Oh yeah, real quick. Balance at the end of June was $1,809.07. We had a deposit of 14 cents for up there, and then we had a check that came through for our post office box of 248. So we're down to 1,561.31 or 21 as of the end of July.
Okay, thank you so much. Larry, land use.
Becky had a question.
Okay. Becky?
Oh, hi. I was trying to, you just said public comment for things not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was trying to raise my hand, but it wasn't clicking. May I go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the last meeting we had on how community members that had a concern over volume of only some outdoor concerts were suddenly turned into enemies of music, fun, and local businesses. And sadly, some of that false narrative originated, it seems, from LOCAC. Anyway, concerns were from caring citizens, some who used to go to concerts in town, but have stopped because it's too loud to even talk to their neighbors and friends that they meet there. I believe we can work something out. And I don't believe that anyone would leave a concert that was turned down just a bit. So again, the community members were only concerned about volume. They don't want to have to call code enforcement, which is not available in the evenings or on weekends. And they most definitely don't want to have to call the sheriff or a noise complaint. So please, let's compromise on this. Music is a wonderful part of our community. And I don't think that organizers of the events or business owners are intentionally trying to have events that can be heard in some cases from a mile away. So perhaps just a walk around the neighborhood while the music is playing would be very eye and ear opening to them. And also, I think we need to keep in mind that we sit on the edge of a precious national estuary that is home to year-round and migratory birds, some that arrive here after a 2 to 3 mile trip. So those are things I think we need to take into consideration, and thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Okay, I see Bev and Dave's hand. I think this is public comment. I've asked you to unmute. Ask again.
I think it was just a thumbs up. I don't know that it was a hand up.
Okay, you're unmute. Okay, all right. Let's go on then to land use, Larry.
Oh, wait a minute.
But
I'm sorry. Dave, did you have something you wanted to say?
Okay, can we go to land use with Larry?
Okay, just we've got another project that's on the agenda for later. Got a couple interesting projects coming up at our next meeting. Wanted to notify everybody. The first Monday is Labor Day, so we will not be meeting on the first Monday. We're transferring it to the following week, the 11th, September 11th. And we have a couple interesting projects there. So stop on by, tune in, and see what's going on in the community.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Trees and landscaping, Andrea and John.
I'll just be brief. We had a great meeting last week. County staff was in attendance as well as a representative from EcoSlow. I think the bottom line is that we got a thumbs up for the planting near the skate park on Los Osos Valley Road. And we need to submit a planting plan. And as you know, LOCAC already approved that. We are going to have to wait on the planting of trees on Palisades for the HCP. And then we talked a little bit about planting on the corner of South Bay Boulevard and Los Osos Valley Road. But really nice to have County Public Works staff and EcoSlow there. And we're making progress.
That's great news. Great news. Outreach.
Has her hand up.
Is that a okay? Good job.
Jackie's doing an okay, but Lindy's got her hand up.
Okay. Lindy, I'm asking you to unmute.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the other idea of our endeavors through tree and landscape has been to make that pathway from the library to the light clear. And somebody went and cut all the belt grass out. It's now walkable. I just want to say kudos to whoever did it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting.
All right, back to the agenda. Outreach, Kristen, we're still on hold, correct?
Right, and we'll be starting up again
In
next month.
September.
And I would love it if anyone else wanted to join us in trying to get more voices.
Thank you. Water report, Deborah.
Okay, water report. Because we have some new people on the council, I thought I would do a quick review of what the water report is. It is primarily a report based on the information that's coming out of the Basin Management Committee. The Basin Management Committee is comprised of a representative from the county, a representative from each one of the water purveyors, Golden State, CSD, S&T, Mutual Water Company. The Basin Management Committee was formed as a result of a lawsuit between the water purveyors, and as a result, the court ordered the formation of the Basin Management Committee to monitor the Los Osos Basin and to implement the Los Osos Basin Plan. The Basin Management Committee creates a report every year. It's sent to the court regarding the Basin Plan and the status of the basin. The BMC contracts with the company Cleith Harris. You're going to hear these names, Cleith Harris, a lot. They do the hydrological study. The BMC meets monthly. The meetings are open to the public. They meet at the CSD meeting room, and they also do a hybrid meeting that's on Zoom. So you can either go in person, you can go on Zoom. The information on the meeting can be found on the county website under groundwater sustainability, or you can just Google Basin Management Committee Los Osos, and it will take you to the county website. You will find the agenda, you will find all the information that will be in the next meeting and all the archives of the meetings. You can add your name to a list of people who receive an email notice of when the next meeting will be. So I urge everybody to participate. This is a very important aspect of our community, and the BMC is a big part of that. There are, however, other agencies involved with the Los Osos Basin. You've heard about the Coastal Commission. The California Coastal Commission is responsible for Special Condition 6. Special Condition 6 prohibits wastewater service to undeveloped properties until the community plan, the Los Osos Community Plan, has been developed and certified as part of the local coastal plan. Okay, so if you want to know why all those empty lots are down in Baywood, it's because the Coastal Commission has said you cannot connect to the sewer. And you can't connect to the sewer, that means you can't, build a house. Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board is another agency. It is a regional agency. It extends from Santa Cruz all the way down to Santa Barbara. We are part of that regional water agency. They are responsible for the mandate of the construction of the sewer in the prohibition zone. So an easy way to think about these agencies is that the Basin Management Committee is responsible for the water pumping, water coming out of the basin. The Regional Water Board is responsible for water discharge, so water coming out of the homes, whether it's into a septic system or into the sewer and out to the recycling center. So that's their job. All of these agencies work together. Obviously, the Coastal Commission is responsible for the coastal wetlands. So all of these agencies interact, and it affects how we are able to use our water in this community and how we can develop within Los Osos. This report, this water report that I present is geared towards a layperson perspective because I don't have any expertise in this area. I encourage everyone who's interested to learn more to attend the BMC meetings where you can make public comment. They are under the Brown Act, and so you have plenty of opportunity to make comment. So with that intro, real quickly, I'm going to go through what was covered in this August 16th Basin Management Committee. You heard about the water offset. I'm not going to talk about that. The sustainable yield estimate, which is the amount of water that's estimated to be available to take out of the basin, remains the same, 2,380 acre feet. Subtract 20% off of that as a buffer, a safety buffer, and that brings the total acre feet that can be used to 1,904. The basin management is, and this came up in the CSD report, is working on permitting and constructing a new monitoring well. This is to monitor seawater intrusion. It will be located at the eastern end of Skyline Drive in 2023. Cleith Harris will provide the hydrogeological consultant services for the well design and construction management. And the bids for the construction of this well were due today. The BMC received a grant from the Water Recycling Funding Program to develop a transient model and analyze recycled water and supplemental water projects to improve the sustainability of the basin. And again, Cleith Harris has been contracted to complete the study. The BMC has completed 3 wells at Los Osos under their program C. Well, they've completed 1 well, that's at Los Olivos. Then they've drilled a 2nd well, which is at South Bay and Los Osos Valley Road. And now they're considering a 3rd well that would be out in the area of Buckskin Road. This is all to move the wells away from the ocean, away from the western end of Los Osos. Let's see, wastewater recycling flows, because this is something that's of interest. The water coming out of our wastewater recycling plant, what goes in is about 53 acre feet. What comes out is about 47 acre feet. Most of that is going to Broderson. Some of it is going, a small amount's going to Bay Ridge. Sea Pines is getting a little bit, and agriculture is getting like almost just 0.46, so very little is being used by ag. The county has completed plans for using recycled water at Los Osos Middle School and the Los Osos Community Park. The plans are going to be, for that, will be submitted to the state for review and approval. And then they have to coordinate with the school system to actually get that stuff online. And I think that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. We are at 9:09 right now. So Deborah, do you mind if we do the regular agenda item and then come back to your active transportation?
Yeah, actually, I mean, my transportation report is so minuscule. You can totally just forget it and I can bring it up next time.
Perfect, thank you. Let's go ahead and do, Larry, do you want to hit us off on the regular agenda item?
Bob Kreiser's here to fill us in on it. It was a project that was submitted quite a while ago, was put on hold There were some questions about it. Bob worked to correct those issues with the county, with county planning, and they're all up on it. And at our last meeting, for some reason, Bob didn't make it, but the committee felt it showed support for the project and moved it on to our agenda here. Bob, do you have something you'd like to add to that?
The short story is that this is not adding living space. And it's a family moving into a family home. And they are wanting to be part of the community that's occupying that. We had meetings on site with county staff, and they determined that there was no issue with moving forward with this permit. And so we're just hopeful that you guys could support it and we go forward.
Okay, could I get a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that LOCAC support this project.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay. It has passed. Thank you so much, Bob. Sorry that it took so long to get you on the agenda.
Thank you for your support.
Okay.
Becky McFarland had a comment on my water report.
I don't see her hand up. Okay.
She put it in the chat.
And Lindy has her hand up. She had her hand up first. Let me go to Lindy and then we'll go to Becky.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Deborah's water report information. Again, basically, even though all the details are sounding very positive, our sustainable yield has not been achieved in 8 years now, and we have continuing saltwater intrusion has not reduced. Nitrates are hardly reduced either. So again, caution ahead on what this is modeling. This is guesstimating that if every toilet is retrofitted, everything will be fine. So I still am very concerned that we maintain a sustainable water supply before we start inviting expanded growth. It's reasonable. And we don't know how much recycled water has actually gone to Broderson. The original idea was that recycled water was to go to offset farming withdrawal, and it never did. It didn't go to the cemetery. It didn't, it's taken 8 years to get.
Do you have a question? Or just just comments?
Maybe I'm just doing my public comment, but I'm concerned that we don't have all the information. So dig a little deeper, everyone. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Becky, I'll ask you to unmute.
Thank you. And thank you, Deborah, for that report. It's good to get some background. I too encourage people, show up at these basin management committees. This is your water supply. This is the only water supply we have. And as to reasons why there's so many vacant lots, it's because we have the effects of overdraft in our basin, and we haven't met any of the water metrics we're supposed to. And the water board is saying it's not going to happen until 2050. So there's a lot more to it, but I do thank you for your report.
Thank you. All right, let's go with the agenda to the business items. With that, I will email the group on come up with a date. I'll email a calendar. We'll get a date to talk about the strategic plan and what we've done so far, what our timelines are for the rest of it. And after looking at tonight's meeting, we may want to actually talk about flipping the agenda items before the community report so that people from the community don't have to wait till after 9. But we can talk about that at our meeting because we would need to change our bylaws. Anything else from the council?
I just want to say thank you for acknowledging that because it was obvious to me as well. And I love when people innovate.
It was like, come on, we can't let these poor people wait till the very end. But okay.
No, I agree with you. I think that would be a very good idea.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Agenda
night.
already.
Thank you.